Hello, everyone. Justin Henderson here with RecruitMilitary and the Vetonomics series. This is our 5th installation, so thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me today on this Friday. Really excited about it. If you're a first-time viewer, the goal of Vetonomics, what I call the economics of veteran hiring, is really twofold. One, to put numbers to the process about understanding the battlefield we're in, as far as unemployment numbers, job seekers looking for employment, skill sets that are on the market versus demand of the market. So, and also I'm very, very excited about this episode because I have a good friend of mine, Scott Jerald, joining us. And Scott's wonderful. You may have seen him before on other RecruitMilitary publications or video content, but Scott's a West Point grad, Army Ranger, excited to talk to him. But first, to get to the numbers, let's go to the presentation and break down the jobs report. So if you can see, if you could please put on the second screen, please. Thank you very much. This is December, breaking down the numbers. It was I think by Wall Street's predictions, a slower hiring month than we expected. We had 210,000 roles filled last month, which brought veteran unemployment rate down from 4.2 to 3.9. That's been interesting. In September, it was 3.6, October 3.8, and now August 3.6, 3.8, 4.2, back to 3.9. Interesting to see that. And that gives you about 427,000 veterans looking for employment across the entire country. Reminder, we're 10% of the U.S. population, 7% of the U.S. workforce. And then the unemployment rate for the national, that was great. It moved from 4.6 down to 4.2. And for anybody that's new at this, really, that 3.5 is considered pretty much full employment, but 3.5 to 4 get you close to full employment. And that lets you know we've got about 6.9 million citizens looking for employment right now. The latest numbers from LinkedIn and other reports was we've got about 10 million openings. So we're still short about 3 million citizens to fill all those needs. Quick breakdown again, as far as the labor report. If you remember, we talked about labor participation rate in developed countries. We have some companies are high into the mid 70s in their labor participation rate. We sit in the low 60s normally. Give you an idea about that, February 2020, we were 63.3% labor participation rate. It dropped way down into the 40s in March, April of 2020. We're already back up to 61.8%. That's good. We're getting really close to getting everybody back to work. An interesting fact out of this too is telework. I know when COVID first started, the thought was, hey, nobody's going back to their office. I know I'm not. I work from home, as you can see. But telework is slowly bringing back down. We were at 11.6% in October, or 11.3%. As far as RecruitMilitary's job board, Indeed's job board, there are still a lot of remote opportunities, work from home opportunities out there. I don't think that's going to go away. It's going to stay in the double digits, but it's not going to be that 20% that people were predicting last year. Where did these jobs go? 210,000 jobs filled in November. Apologize. Should say November instead of October. Interesting part was 90,000 were in professional services. That lets you know that the machine is back and running. What probably wasn't surprising, if you're following the COVID numbers, is that we lost 31,000 jobs in retail. This is a really interesting paradox because we're right into the Black Friday, right? Day after Thanksgiving, the holiday surge of buying. We're not sure what's going to happen. If the jobs are going away, that probably means they're not coming back. That means the Amazon, the Walmart.coms, those online buying is the wave of the future. I was trying to look up numbers for seasonal hires. I mean, I won't know that till January, but I'll be interested if we compare in the January episode the number of part-time seasonal hires in 2019 versus the number of seasonal hires in 2021. Bet you that 2021 number is going to be a lot lower, not just because of supply demand, but because we've moved into this online buying part of our society. So that'll be really interesting. But we're continuing to see the boom in transportation and warehousing. again, going from the service economy of entertain me, right? Restaurants, hotels, resorts, to just buying stuff. That's all going through over the road trucking, manufacturing, transportation. So not surprised those roles are leading the charge. Same with manufacturing. Manufacturing jobs is probably the biggest demand in the country right now, behind transportation and warehousing. And then we're going to see construction, 31,000, which is great, because Scott's our construction liaison here for those veterans looking for employment in that industry, or for hiring authorities looking to hire military construction. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Scott Jerald. Again, Scott and I have been friends for probably over 5-6 years now. Started as a business relationship. He was hiring military officers from me. Scott's background is he's a 1982 West Point graduate. His bachelor's degree is in engineering management, civil engineering. He has combat experience, Army Ranger, served from 1992 to 1997, and he has his MBA. Scott is currently the vice president of operations at Yates Construction. If you could put my PowerPoint back up, Raul, that would be great. Here's Scott's bio real quick, but I did want to show you one other thing. You may have seen Scott on Fox News. RecruitMilitary was asked to join Fox News on National Hire a Veteran Day, and they wanted to talk to our CEO, Tim Best. They wanted to talk to a hiring authority that was proficient in hiring military experienced talent, and then talk to one of those veterans that were hired by that person. So you can see here, Tim Best is our CEO, Scott Jerald, and then Destiny. So thank you so much. After that, Scott, thanks again for coming to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Justin.
Q&A. So yeah, I real quick, could you give us a quick introduction? I know I did a big overview, but just give us a quick history of Scott.
Quick history of Scott. Well, graduated the academy in '92. Served my time in the military, had great experience, great mentors, incredible non-commissioned officers that made me very, very successful, and I am grateful for that. I transitioned out the end of '97, '98, beginning of '98, and went into the private sector, and have been there ever since. Grew through different ranks and in different ways, which I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But been very, very fortunate, and you know, there isn't a day that goes by that whether I look at who we're hiring, do they have, you know, a certain amount of skills that military people provide, or, you know, manifest in their day to day, as well as, you know, I go back and think of different experiences in the military and apply them to different situations in my role overseeing East Coast operations for Yates Construction.
That's great. Yeah, you know, you talk about that. I think we all veterans would agree that service never leaves the core of who we are. The discipline, the human traits that are just really instilled in us really carry us through life. I guess that would be my number one question. You know, exiting the Army, being that combat arms leader that you were, I didn't call this that, but they call it non-technical leadership, and going into the construction industry out of there. You know, what experience, what skills did you leverage in your transition to make you so successful in the construction industry?
That's a great question, Justin. I don't know if there's actually, you know, a handful that you could just pick, but I would say one of the things that I've been able to benefit from was, you know, the military teaches you how to communicate, teaches you how to communicate horizontally as well as vertically. Being able to see the game plan or the strategy 2 levels up. You know, what is the plan 2 levels up? In the units I was in, every soldier down to the private knew what the 2 level up mission was. So that's one, is the strategy, the communication. And then I would just say the overall grit and drive that you see from so many people in the military, regardless of service. Just, you know, hey, we can do this. You know, it amazes me. My boss and I always have these conversations. It's like, we've never heard from a military person say, I can't do that. It's
Yep.
always, okay, hey, I'll figure it out, or we got to figure it out, or something to that. And it's just that intestinal fortitude drive that you get.
Yeah, I see the same as far as the, I find discipline carries me really far, that grit you talk about. And another one is I found is owning the order. You talk about 2 levels up, and when you're bringing those orders down, that all the way down to that private owns that order. Hey, this is your job. And they know that, hey, I have to execute my job correctly for the entire team to work. I found that very helpful as well.
I would agree with you. We subscribe within Yates. We subscribe to a model of winning with accountability. When you look at it, it is no different than what you see in any branch of service. Of, hey, who's accountable? Who's responsible? And
Yep.
not pointing fingers, not making excuses. Hey, who's responsible? Who's accountable?
Yeah. Well, that goes back to that, right? That owning the order and accountability. That is, for what I've been doing the last 15 years, anytime I talk to a hiring manager, operational leader, they talk about that so much. The human side of their employees, that discipline, that work ethic, right? The accountability. So that's great because that's inside of you. But the hard part is the interview process in corporate America isn't geared towards the human. It's geared towards the experience, right? Hey, do you have this civil engineering degree, or do you have this certification in whatever it might be? You didn't have that coming out. I mean, you had the engineering degree, the civil engineering focus, but you weren't a Army Corps of Engineer. So what was the hard? Did you encounter a lot of hardships trying to get into the construction industry right out of the Army?
It wasn't so much getting into the industry and I wouldn't say hardship. I would look at it as learning challenges that are out there.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about construction. Could barely I could put a hammer through a door, back in the Rangers, but I couldn't put a hammer to a nail.
Yeah, right.
Without busting my thumb. But what I found was really quickly, and I think a lot of veterans, I would hope, experience this, is that it's just a different weapon system. Instead of a weapon system, it's just a different business system, different operating system. You have battlefield operating systems, you have business operating systems, and it's a reopening your mind back up to, okay, hey, what is it I need to know about how this business operating system literally works? No different than a battlefield operating system.
You mentioned that earlier this week when we were getting prepared for this conversation. The one thing you said was it's also just terminology sometimes, right? What in the Rangers you called shoot, move, and communicate is policies and procedures in civilian world, right? It's just understanding that correlation.
Correct. You'd have your, whatever your SOPs were.
Yep.
The Rangers is RSOP, Ranger Standing Operating Procedures. In a business just like ours, here's our policy and procedure manual. It's not so much a policy, but it's more of a procedure manual. Hey, here's how we're going to run meetings. Here's how, we're going to start with safety first. That's how we run meetings. When we document things that needs to be out in X amount of time. It's just a matter of learning what the new, if you want to call it what the new battlefield is, and I wouldn't even say it's just a new environment. You're stepping off into a new environment and really understanding and trying to figure out, okay, what is it I need to know?
Yeah, that brings me back to 15 years ago when I first started here. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So when I started here, the first thing I did was call every steel company in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh I could. I wanted to bring veterans back to the Burg, bring steel back. And what we ended up doing was we found a website that was Metallurgy for Dummies. And I would give every officer that website, say, hey, just know 15 or 20 of these key terms, and then drop those in the interview. And it kind of bridges that experience from the military to, hey, I can understand your lingo as well. So if you're a veteran right now looking for employment in the construction industry, I highly recommend, sourcing for those type of terms, especially if you're getting into project management, understanding the civilian equivalent of the 5 steps of a project so that you can use those terms or being interviewed. I guess leading into that, terminology, things like that. You've hired lots of military in your time. I know you've hired a lot of veterans through our services. Do you have any advice for those veterans coming out that are getting in an industry like, hey, if you're a combat arms officer or you're an Army Corps of officer, hey, here's some roles you should look at. I know project management seems the easiest like plug and play for a lot of transitioning officers or senior NCOs, but do you have any insights for them of, hey, maybe you should look at these roles or maybe specific positions?
That's a good question, Justin. I don't necessarily know if it's specific roles, but my advice to whether it's combat arms or combat support, combat service support, and is look at what your strengths and what your core is value wise, and what you do and what you've done in the military, and look at the role that you may be applying for, and there becomes a little bit of adaptability where you can kind of see the differences in it.
Yeah. I think what you
that's
said too was look at the billets you had in the military, pull out what you really enjoyed in those roles, right?
correct.
Hey, what did you find yourself naturally curious about? And
Correct.
yeah,
Is it problem solving? Is it figuring stuff out? Is it on an accounting side or on a logistical side? A lot of veterans do very, very well in logistics, but we really don't promote that in the
yeah,
military because it's ingrained. We all know that whether you're in the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, we all know that there's a logistical component for how we go about wherever it is we're going to train or where we're going into combat. And those are skills that I don't think really get manifested very well
yeah,
when while you're in the military, because it's so second nature. It is okay. Hey, we
mhm,
have to go from point A to point B. We have to do this. We have to have a refueling point. We have to coordinate for that. The logistic. There's a lot of value, and there's a lot of look at the supply chain issues that we
mhm,
have now in the
yeah,
country. People are looking for alternative solutions, and that is where military people strive, because we're constantly, whether it's in training or in actual combat, the
mhm,
logistical environment changes all the time. We have to figure it out, and it's so innate, but it doesn't, when you're in the military, it doesn't get manifested to you that, hey, this is
yeah,
logistics.
yeah. Well, we see that. I mean, coming right when COVID hit last year, March, April, by May and June, those distribution centers, warehouses, everybody, logistics, everybody was calling us because that's exactly what they needed. Hey, the way we've been doing it for decades just stopped, and we have to find a workaround. And having that creative solution type of mentality works well, and it has worked well. Um, you talk about some of those. I would say the only group worse than human resources, recruiting, talent acquisition, operations managers of dissecting military experience is the veteran themselves. We are just horrible at translating our experience. And I've been doing it 15 years. Uh, what do you have any recommendations on either side of the fence? Like for you as a military leader, how do you have certain interview questions or processes or a way you build a job description or the way you um, direct your recruiting team to pull that skill set out of the military or pull that experience? Do you have any tricks, that we can give our audience?
I hadn't really thought about it in that aspect because
Yeah.
I've worked with you guys for 20 plus years, so we have a good relationship. But one of the things I really look at is ability to communicate. Taking a step back from the recruiting manager standpoint, I look at whatever position we're trying to hire for. What is the value that position brings to our operations? What is the value? Now, go look at the interviewee, he or she, and ask them questions around that value. Maybe it's communication, maybe it's problem solving. I ask some questions about how do you handle because you're in the military. Some people may say it's very dictatorial or authoritarian. When there's a problem and your boss isn't getting it, give me an example of what you did to solve the problem, or maybe take it a level higher. What is your communication level? I also look at questions which I think really highlight not just the military, but also anybody. And I hired, I interview several people who aren't from the military, and I ask the same question: give me a time when you got knocked down and have to dust yourself off.
Yes, that's one of my favorites
in life. Just in life, it could be anything. I had one woman I interviewed. She told me, it was my senior year in college. It was the second semester, her senior year. She was set to graduate, had a job lined up, and had a personal tragedy in her family, and was looking at not being able to complete and graduate from college. And so, okay, so what did you do, and what was the result? And you'd be amazed. You kind of get an insight as to the drive and the character of the individual.
Yeah, this goes back to kind of what I was getting to too, is so much of your interview process is focused around that human. Hey, if that person can get up one more time than they fell, that's success. Standing up one more time than you fell. Just keep on your feet, keep moving. You have that grit, you have that determination. You can always upload the software. I think what did you say? Value versus functionality was it? I think that's a big one, is understanding what you can train if you get the right person. I find that other times in these interview processes, when talking to a veteran, they're so focused on, have you touched this button? Have you touched this piece of software? And then they miss out on wow, we have this person that'll go do it on their own. They'll go learn that on their own because they've got that drive and they've got that willingness to succeed. So that's really good. Thank you. Anything else that you think could be helpful for, we see this, I see this hiring push at least all through 2022. We still have over 1.6 million job seekers. We've got almost 5 million more jobs than we have job seekers. We've got a lot of room for this economy to grow. We know that there's bills going through Congress now that's going to increase demand in your industry. Any advice for those 2022 job seekers on how they can prepare? Maybe it's a vet a year out or 6 months out. Any advice for how to prepare for that transition into a hot economy in the construction industry?
That's a good question. There's a couple things that were in there. Just overall, the construction industry, at the beginning of 2021, the construction industry was short 430,000 jobs is what was projected.
Wow.
And we really haven't opened. We just started opening back up after the majority of the pandemic. And, my company alone, we probably have over, in my division, I probably have over 50 open requisitions right now. Going to what advice is, and I don't think it's any different than anybody else communicates, but network and just try to, take the initiative, pick up the phone, call somebody in the industry. I did see something the other day which really, really impressed me. We knew that we were going to interview him. They had called the main office and said, "Hey, can I talk to a project manager? I'm interviewing for a position within your company. Can I talk to one of your project managers prior to me coming to interview?"
Wow.
I was like, "Ooh, we we need to pay attention to this individual because that was some great initiative."
Yes. Yeah. The initiative.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing I would like to communicate is don't be intimidated, but at the same time, don't be cocky in the sense that, hey, I have this very successful military career. Well, only 0.45% of the population serves in the United States military. So
Yep.
the remaining 99.55 have, a
Yep.
lot of them have no idea. So you're going to have to be very open. Going to be just as adaptable as you were in the military. You're going to have to be adaptable in that interview going into that.
Yeah.
They're going to ask you questions about your background. Well, then they're going to start narrowing down what that position is, and you need to do your homework and understand what the position is, what the role is. And a lot of times in interviews, there'll be some preparatory, there's a liaison in between, really understand the role. And, if you haven't networked with somebody who's transitioned out or haven't worked with someone like yourself at RecruitMilitary, hey, help me with the translation of what
Yep.
this role is. And, here's what I do in the background. This isn't, the private sector is very much like the military in the sense that the only way we're going to be successful is if we communicate with everybody around us and get as much information possible to accomplish the task.
Networking is critical. I by the way, I love whoever called and asked to talk to a private project manager before the interview. That's great. The networking I see, especially if you're active duty right now, is LinkedIn is wonderful. If you went to West Point, connect with every West Point alum you can find. If you find people that went to your university, people that served in the same branch of service, and they're much more likely to connect with you while you're active duty than if you are job seeking. Not saying that they wouldn't, but it's almost like, hey, it's not threatening. I'm helping a military member, especially when you find industries or companies you're really interested in. You find that company on LinkedIn, you find people that have commonalities with you, you reach out to them, you communicate to them, understand the culture, understand the roles, and that way you walk in there and you have a better perspective. So I think that's great. How have you found a way? So a hiring manager that's a civilian, hasn't hired military, but says, hey, I want to get military for project management, superintendent, some of those roles that you and I know military goes right into well. Do you have any recommendations for them on verbiage of job description, interview questions, anything that would help them to attract more military members? Do you have any advice there?
My advice would be is you have to, in my opinion, that
Yep.
if you don't understand what's written on the paper as it relates to who you're about to interview for a position, find someone or find a resource like RecruitMilitary to help you with that translation, because it's going to save you time.
Yeah.
You can, if you've never seen or experienced it, you might get a resume from somebody who's done, I'm giving an example, they might have been in transportation and did phenomenally in logistics, but when you read their resume, you might think this was, somebody that jumped out of airplanes, because you don't know what the
Yeah.
translation
Mhm.
is, and you might miss a quality candidate if you don't have that translation.
Yeah, we talk about activating the field, activating the veterans within your organization. So if you're a hiring manager, HR, recruiter, and you're looking to have that intentional outreach to that community, empower the veterans within your organization. Kind of like you said, they will help you better understand the right military talent to target. They'll help you better understand what verbiage to put in a job description, so that veteran that you're looking to will make that connection too. One of the tripping points I found for military leaders coming out, and this is for both audiences listening, is I've often found that we are servant leaders. We are taught to be humble about our successes and own our failures. And when you are given a leadership question in an interview, as a servant leader, it's all about the team. And what I'll hear is, hey, Scott, give me a time that you were able to overcome some type of obstacle, right? Hey, the project was 3 months behind, and how did you get it up to speed? And a guy like Scott, right, is going to answer, well, he's going to tell you what his team accomplished. So it's a singular question. Scott answers in the plural. And what you find, that civilian manager says, well, hey, Scott didn't do anything. His team did it. And my advice to those hiring authorities, those interviewers, is, hey, no, that's just a sign of servant leadership. And for you military officers, military NCOs that are leaders, hey, remember, when you get that question about leadership, that's the one time you're supposed to brag. That's the time in the interview you say, hey, this is what I did. Does that resonate with you at all?
It does, and I think there's a happy medium there.
Yeah.
Is that hiring manager is looking for someone who stepped up and said, "Hey, I did this."
Mhm.
Our success in the military is really due to the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines underneath us who executed it. But
Yep.
in your interview, what you can do is you can manifest that servant leadership by saying, this is the team did a phenomenal job, but there was a point where there's a decision to be made,
Oh,
where
I like that.
somebody had to take responsibility and make a decision, and this is the decision that I was tasked with. So you're not being
Yeah,
cocky and overconfident, but you
I like
are
that.
manifesting that you are the leader and the decision that you made, and you can elaborate on the different evaluative process you went, the deliberate decision making process you went through to make that decision. And sometimes it's within a blink of an eye, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's, hey, I got a little bit of time to think about this and reprogram it. But there is a way, and I would suggest, if you think you're going to get hit with those questions, practice it. Practice. That's all we do in the military, is we train
Yeah,
until the inevitable. No
yeah.
different than if you're going for an interview. Practice. Don't think you're
Yeah,
going to wing it.
you think about, how many hours did you spend to prepare for boards in the military, right? How much time did you prepare to be promoted? And then go, how much time did you prepare for that interview? And
Exactly.
if one is hours and one is moments, right? No wonder you're successful here, not successful there. Uh, I think that's spot on. Is bring that dedication, attention to detail, esprit de corps to your interview process, just like you did your military service. No, that's great. I know we kind of ran up on time. I don't want to cut you short. Is there anything that you feel like we didn't cover yet that you want to get across to the audience? Um, any helpful hints? Anything you have to help them win?
Just think back to what made you successful in the military and apply that to that drive and
Mhm.
mission accomplishment, and going to that interview and securing that job, because it doesn't change. It's just
Yeah,
the battlefield's different, and the objectives are a little bit different, but the drive and the commitment, the planning, the
yeah,
rehearsal, that doesn't change.
Yeah. You said something earlier that I meant to follow up on, and that brought it back to my mind. The nervousness. I was an E4 in the Marine Corps, and I put brass on everybody's shoulder that I interviewed with. Might as well put 3 or 4 stars on this. For some reason, I felt that hiring manager was the most important person in the world. And my advice to the audience now, if you're a job seeker, know that hiring manager is hoping that you're the right candidate, because Scott's job is to bring in a high value human capital to his team. That is definitely a critical part of his role, but his day to day is to execute the mission. And so Scott is hoping that you're the right candidate just as much as you're hoping you're the right candidate. That hiring manager is going, please let this be the right guy. I'm really hoping to fill this role with the right talent and move on. So if you're interviewing and you start to get nervous, know that person across the table is pulling for you just as much as you're pulling for yourself, because they need to fill that role. They want to fill that role. And hopefully that will calm the nerves a little bit and know, hey, no, I'm in a safe space because they invited me here for a reason. I'm in this room having a conversation for a reason. And hopefully that'll calm everybody down. Outside of that, we're going to drop, by the way, I did show that slide of Scott on Fox News for National Hire Veteran Day. It was a great 6-minute slot. We were the opening scene or segment, I should say. So we'll drop that in the comments link if anybody wants to watch that. But again, Scott Jerald with Yates Construction, as he said, over 50 openings within his division alone. He loves veterans. He loves military. So go to ygyates.com to the career page, see what you can find. And you can find Scott on LinkedIn as well. But thank you again, Scott, so much for your time. This was very, very insightful. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I did. Thank you, Justin. And for all those that are serving or have just recently transitioned out, on behalf of myself and my family, thank you for what you've done over the last 2 decades. Very,
Yes.
very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Well said, sir. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
See you.
See ya.